Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining to learn a little bit more about Indigenous peoples of North America. This is one of our favorite collections. I speak for Becky and myself personally. We're really excited to share some insights about this collection because we really do think it offers a really
Now
ranging
I don't hear
perspective.
anything.
So before I get started, I'll introduce myself. I'm Sarah Tarpley. I'm Director of Academic Engagement at Gale, and we'll be tag teaming it today. And so my colleague, Becky Sowers, is a trainer on my team. Some of you may have encountered her through her personal work with you on an individual account level. She's here to support you in acquiring all things that you need to implement and utilize the Indigenous Peoples of North America collection. So I'll go ahead and get started. And to give you an idea of what we'll be covering and how we'll sequence our events today, I'll first cover a little bit about the Indigenous Peoples of North America collection. So I'll touch on, what it is. And then Becky will walk us through a demonstration of the resource, highlighting some of the, key collections and content pieces and tools that are available for exploration. She'll then walk you through some of our support materials that are bespoke to Indigenous peoples of North America. And of course, we'll have questions and time for questions throughout. So if you do have questions, feel free to utilize the chat. Towards the end of the session, we'll also open up the mics in case anyone would like to ask their question aloud.
Going to
For the
turn my
group, we'd be happy
computer
to
out.
entertain that as well. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk a little bit about Indigenous Peoples of North America, Part 1. So this is a wonderful collection. It really enables the exploration of the political, social, and cultural history of Native peoples. The archive collection illustrates the fabric of the North American story with unprecedented depth and breadth. So the date coverage you can see here on the screen is 1665, and I have to move your faces because I haven't memorized the end date, 1988 to 1988. So this is a wonderful collection. It is about 1.4 million pages, and it really does provide a numerous amount of primary source documents that will help you explore topics like trade and communication, Arctic exploration and tribes, the Iroquois Confederation, things like the Canadian Catholic Indian missions, Indian removal, Indian wars, and the Frontier Army, the establishment of the Canadian Indian and Aboriginal departments, Indian delegations, and Indian federal relations as well. There are dances and festivals explored here. There's Alaskan Indian policies, Indian languages and linguistics, assimilation, and the Indian New Deal. There's details on relocation, termination, and the Indian Claims Commission, water and fishing rights, civil rights, radicalism, poverty, and the American Indian movement. So this is a very, very robust and diverse, informative source that's going to increase or enhance, I should say, the research and understanding of the historical experiences, the cultural traditions, and the innovations and political status of Indigenous peoples in the United States and Canada's. So researchers will be able to explore the impact of invasion and colonization on Indigenous peoples in North America, as well as the intersection of Indigenous and European histories and systems of knowledge through the use of manuscripts, monographs, newspapers, photographs, motion pictures, images, artwork, and so much more that we're eager to show you today. So these are primary sources that are really going to help to take researchers beyond the facts and figures of history and deeper into understanding of Indigenous people. If we take a look at some of the collections, Becky in a moment here is going to spotlight several of these collections for you, but I wanted to just again kind of harken back to my earlier statement. you have at your disposal about 1.4 million pages of content from the 16th through the 20th century. And this particular archive is comprised of 52 amazing collections that sort of comprise that total, right? So it's going to provide um, an immense spectrum of documents and a high value to end users in that regard. So again, these collections provide material on language, customs, religion, culture. Um, I won't spotlight them all here, but of the many collections providing perspective on Indigenous persons' voice, there are a few to highlight, including 5 collections from Wichita State University. The first 2 are the Predeman and the Hume collection, which are primarily photographic histories of the tribes that were in the Oklahoma territories. The Laws collection is a 20th century anthropological collection, which is really interesting. The Hart collection deals with the appeals process among the Turtle Mountain section of the Chippewa tribe. And another standout collection is the Indigenous Peoples newspaper collection, which provides papers sourced from various tribes and tribal organizations published in both English and native languages. And when Becky gets into advanced search, she'll actually show you where you can find the ability to limit your search results to those papers that have specific languages in them. I also wanted to spotlight for you some of the 52 collections that have sort of a more localized focus. So I did pull out this particular slide that organizes some of the southeastern United States focused collections. And so you can see kind of what the tribal focus is on this slide and you know the regional focus as well. But if you're looking to do more of a, you know, sort of a local research project, this is a sampling of some of the collections that do focus on the southeastern United States and some of the tribes that you see outlined here. I will say that there are, again, these are just samplings. This is not an exhaustive list of all Native tribes and tribal agencies. But again, just kind of putting a sampling up on the screen for you. It includes the 8 state recognized tribes located in North Carolina. So you can find that information. And then there are a wide range of tribal agencies that are covered as well. And the North Carolina Indian Affairs Commission is one of those. So again, just a sampling to give you an idea of the type of information and the representation, the diverse representation of tribes and tribal agencies that does exist. So I do encourage you to explore this on your own. It's a lot of fun to sort of get in there and to really sort of play with the variety of source types, content types, if you will, and also to see the connections related to the tribes themselves and the tribal agencies. There is a great blog post. So for those of you interested in understanding a little bit about how we have taken the indexing process for this content seriously, Win Wasson, I worked with him. He is a social sciences librarian at Syracuse University, and he wrote up a really interesting blog post. In many databases, as you all may know, if you want to conduct research on Indigenous people, you sort of need to list out various terms by which Indigenous people are called, or by themselves, or called by others, in combination with Boolean operators in order to get comprehensive results. And in this blog post on Syracuse University Library's website or blog site, he really kind of explores how we at Gale have taken care of our indexing and our optical character recognition technology. So with Indigenous peoples of North America, again, because it includes so many different types of primary sources about Indigenous peoples from a wide range of sources, including some produced by Indigenous peoples themselves, as well as some with the perspectives of non-Indigenous allies and colonizers. We really have made some technological strides here with this particular archive. We've made some progress in helping to remedy the issue, right? That ability to have to enter in multiple search variants here. So as an example here, and outlined in the blog post, this is a screen capture. These are a couple screen captures within the blog post from the Mohawk Nation newspaper. And if you search on Haudenosaunee, you'll get highlighted results as documented in this blog for 5 nations as well as 6 nations and the colonizer term Iroquois. So the benefit of this is really sort of highlighting the extensive work that Gail took to modernize our index of vocabulary related to Indigenous peoples. We've used machine-aided indexing alongside our human indexers to add the names of Indigenous nations to digitized sources that have substantial content about specific Indigenous nations and topics. So human indexers at Gale then checked with our manual human indexers at Gale then checked with the machine-aided indexing program, and we went through and we checked for accuracy and made any necessary corrections. So it's really the benefit of us still having, human indexers on staff. And so the result of this is it really kind of helps to break down some of the barriers created by colonizer representation of Indigenous peoples by including more content with the perspectives of Indigenous peoples and applying that machine-aided indexing and OCR to synthesize the terminologies used by Indigenous peoples and colonizers to facilitate a more holistic set of search results. So you may see some of that come through today as Becky begins to demonstrate some of the information that she's going to share with you in the live demonstration. All right. Oh, sorry, I had some additional screen captures there blown up. I'm going to transition over to Becky now so she can start to tee up the demonstration that she's prepared for you. Becky?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So what you see on the slide, and I'll actually start sharing my screen in a second here, but what you see on the slide is a case of the Lumbee tribe. They are a tribe in North Carolina, and they are kind of well known for kind of fighting the segregation of schools that was present in the 60s. And so what I'll do is I'll provide some more context in a second, but I do want to, I think it'll let me share my screen. Yes, okay. All right, can you see my archive, Sarah? Are we looking good?
Yes, it's just now popped up.
Okay, great. Of course, it's going to be slow for me today. Okay, so yeah, to kind of provide some additional context to what we saw on the screen, during the civil rights era, it's obviously the common narrative there revolves around the struggles and progress of the Black community. However, it's also really crucial to recognize that Native Americans also face significant challenges for their fight for civil rights. So again, what you saw on the screen and what I'll show you live in a second here is an instance of the Lumbee tribe, again, kind of experiencing that segregation. The small town of Dunn, North Carolina was kind of mirroring the segregated norms that we saw in the Jim Crow era, throughout the South. And it really adhered to very, rigid racial divides. And we saw that kind of bleed into aspects of daily life with schools, restaurants, theaters, all kind of enforcing those racial boundaries. And at the time, there really were kind of 3 main racial identities that were recognized, and that was Caucasian, African American, and Native American. And so, again, this kind of case really centers around the legal battle for the recognition and rights of the Lumbee tribe, and their fight for better schools as well as integrated schools. And so we'll kind of kick off our demo today with a basic search of Lumbee just to see if there's some good content that we can pull up from this archive here. Before I execute a basic search, I want to just kind of show off the home page. All of our products have a very similar look and feel, and that is intentional. We try to keep things really consistent. So even if it's your first time in the Indigenous Peoples of North America archive, it might look and feel familiar to you. You might, you'll know where the basic search is, you know where the advanced search is, and you might know where to find some of those tools. So, on the screen here, we have our large banner with our basic search right in the middle of it and the advanced search kind of leveraged below it. There's also some information about this resource. If you click into it and expand that piece here, it takes you into our Learning Center, which I will save for Sarah to review with us after my demo. And then to the right here, you also have a content advisory, and you will see this in some of our archives. This is basically alerting researchers to the fact that there is language and terminology and ideology in this archive that, we consider offensive, outdated, biased, ideology. And that is because we are presenting these manuscripts and these monographs the way they were when they were written and published. We don't, modify anything. We don't censor anything. And so we're just kind of warning you that there's going to be language in here that, again, we deem as offensive, but it might be necessary to read or to use and search with, when you're using the archive. A lot of the content within here, or some of it was, written about Indigenous peoples by, European settler communities, by religious organizations. And so you're going to find that biased language as you kind of navigate. So back to our story about the Lumbee tribe. We're just going to kick it off with a really basic search for Lumbee here and see, what kind of content pops up. When you execute a search from the archive, you will be met with different content types. So you can see here in this kind of gray bar, you have monographs, manuscripts, newspapers, and periodicals. And you can see those same kind of content types duplicated below. And what's really great about that, that indexing and that search term hits is that you can use the keyword previews here on the screen to kind of get a feel for what this document or this monograph or this manuscript is talking about. And you can determine whether or not this, document is going to be useful in your research. So, again, considering the fight for integrated schools that the Lumbee tribe was fighting for, I can open up these keyword previews and I can kind of see where my hit term, so hit term here is referring to the green highlighted search term. I can see where that, sits within the document. I can kind of read the sentences before and after, and I can determine if this is something that I want to, further explore based on my research question or research interest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up this article right here. Just based off the title, it seems like it's going to be very relevant to our research on the school segregation that was taking place in, the small town of Dunn, North Carolina. And right away, we are taken into this larger document. And what's going to happen when you click on any of your article names is you'll be taken to the first page of that document, where the first page where your hit term lives in that document. This happens to be page 1. And so you can see right here, our hit term highlight is showing exactly where our search term lands within our document. What this kind of manuscript is showing us here, as I kind of navigate with the carets on the left side and right side of the image, is this is a collection of newspaper clippings. It's a collection of different correspondence between different attorneys that are representing the Lumbee tribe, as well as attorneys representing the school district. You can see that, as you kind of read through these correspondence, there's actually a fight for deciding if the American Indian Association for American Indian Affairs wants to actually assist the Lumbees in their legal efforts to, fight for that integration. And so you can, again, navigate your document using these carets here on the left and right. Or if you look in our Explore panel, there are different appearances of your hit term. And so I can quickly, jump to page 9 and again, find my highlighted term. I can jump to page 61 and find my highlighted term. This correspondence right here is actually kind of it's a letter to Miss Laverne Madigan, who was a representative for the Association of American Indian Affairs. And you can see that the writer here is basically saying, hey, your group came back again, referring to the Lumbee Indians, and they're really wanting me to represent them. However, I'm not sure I want to do that. And they're kind of talking through what it would mean to represent the Lumbees. I will, spoiler alert, the AAIA did end up supporting the Lumbees fight for equal education. But this is just a really great collection of, again, that, that correspondence, those newspaper clippings, all speaking to the fight for, integration that's happening in Dunn, North Carolina. Other things that you can find in your kind of panel over here on the left that is helpful to navigate some of these larger documents is your illustrated works. And so if you click on this, as Sarah mentioned, there's a lot of great imagery, photographs, pictures that are spread throughout this archive. And the illustrated works button makes it easy to find those things. And so I can kind of just hover my mouse over any of these hyperlinks here, and I'll be taken directly to that image, whether it's a photograph again, or there might be a map, there might be a drawing or a chart. All of that lives kind of in that illustrated works button and can help you find that really unique material. So you're not, just handing your class a lot of written text, but also imagery as well. You can also, I'm going to move back into a different one of our search term pages here. As Sarah mentioned, there is optical character recognition and plain text that is applied, by machines and manually to this archive. If you wanted to see what that plain text looks like, in our view options, you can decide to view both the scanned image and the text side by side, or just the text only. As you move through the documents here, that text will also update. This is great for users who are relying on a screen reader for accessibility to be able to read the scanned image out loud to them. A screen reader, cannot read a scanned image, but they can read that plain text. And so if you do have someone who is visually impaired and reliant on that screen reader, that plain text OCR is there. And that's also what's used, for text and data mining, if you wanted to explore the archive, within the Digital Scholar Lab, for example. So that's where that OCR plain text lives, and you can toggle that on or off using your view options here. So if you kind of are looking at this manuscript and you see a bunch of, correspondence that you want your students to read further, and, really decipher the opinions of the people writing this, what influence they may be under, to, again, maybe decide whether or not they want to help represent the Lumbees. You can bring users back to this page directly by leveraging the Get Link button here at the top of the screen. So while you do have the opportunity to, download and print and, share this manuscript to yourself or someone else, I always like to kind of highlight the Get Link, because this will create a permalink where, if a user clicks on this, it will take them directly back to this page from where they've pulled the link from. And what's nice then is not only do you have access to the actual document, but you have access to, all of those tools that I've showed you and will continue to show you throughout the demonstration today. So again, that Get Link tool lives up here. We always recommend putting it in your learning management system, putting it in a syllabus for recommended or required reading. There's different ways to kind of leverage that permalink there. So kind of thinking about this idea of the fight for integrated schools in, the small town of Dunn, North Carolina, maybe you want to really expand your research outside of North Carolina to see if there might be other examples of Indigenous tribes, either fighting segregation within schools and what their experience might be like. And so in order to do that, we are going to actually navigate to our advanced search and take a look at some content we find here. So I am going to do an advanced search here for Indian schools and segregation. So if you notice here, I know it's a little small, I'm using an asterisk. What's great about our advanced search is that there are search tips built directly into the advanced search page. So I can open up my special characters here like quotation marks or other wildcards like my asterisk, and it will explain to, the user what these wildcards, what these Boolean operators do, and how they can either expand or, limit your search results. So what I'm doing with the asterisk here is I'm going to be searching for any version of segregate that also includes different suffixes. So segregation, segregating, segregated. And so I'm going to go ahead and execute this search here. We will be coming back to the advanced search. I have some other really unique features within this search that I want to show off. But first, we're going to go ahead and execute this search to see, again, if there are other perspectives, other experiences that we can find in terms of, segregation within schools. The same thing happens here where your hit term your hit term highlighting will show up in your keyword previews. What's unique about the advanced search is now both sets of your search terms will be highlighted. So here we can see Indian schools, but also segregation, with that being my second search term. So you can see both terms are being highlighted here. What I want to do for this example is look at a monograph as our content type. Again, we looked previously as a manuscript, so I want to kind of switch gears and look at a monograph to see if there are, again, accounts of the Indian experience when it comes to education and segregation of schools. So I'm going to go ahead and open this one, The American Indian in the U.S. Once it loads, it was written by Warren K. Moorhead. He is an American archaeologist and historian, widely known for his work in the field of Native American archaeology. And this is a very large monograph. It's 457 pages, and it's kind of presenting the conditions of the American Indian, their political history, and other topics in this long, large monograph. So there's a couple things I want to highlight here for you while we look at this monograph. There are two different number drop-down buttons here that you can use to navigate a larger document like this. And they do mean different things. So on the left, you will see a drop-down here, and these numbers represent the scanned image number of the document or monograph that you're looking at. So if I flip to page 1, for example, this is actually the cover of the monograph in question. And again, if we're digitizing something at Gale, we're digitizing all of it. So you'll see, the front cover, the inside cover, the first page. If there's writing on any of those pages, all that gets captured. So that first set of numbers there is your scanned image number. If I've moved further, I'm going to take us to the table of contents. I can zoom in on this by using our magnifying glass icon up here in our image viewer screen. And I'm just going to kind of scan the table of contents to see if there's anything relevant to education or schooling or anything like that. And I can see right here that chapter 20 on page 200 is titled Education. So now that takes me to my second kind of set of page numbers here. This is the actual page number that corresponds to the assigned page number in the document, the monograph, the book that you're looking at. So this is telling me that education starts on page 200. I'm going to go ahead and select 200. And now I'm brought to the beginning of that chapter on education. So this is really useful for a couple things. Again, we scan everything. So you'll see that front and back cover and things like that. But if you have, if this monograph, for example, was cited in a different journal entry or something else, and it was cited, a quote was cited on page 201, and you were trying to find that quote from that citation, you could really easily go to this monograph and navigate to page, 201, and you can then find the quote. So if you are, if you're finding information from a citation, for example, it's really useful to have that actual page number versus just the scanned image number. There are other ways to kind of view these documents and these much larger documents at that. And so I want to kind of show this off too. But I did want to also just kind of highlight the actual chapter here and its relevance to, our larger research question. And right here on the screen here, you can see that The monograph states between 1850 and 1875, the education of Indian children was confined to various missionary and philanthropic organizations. Indians could avail themselves of collegiate education, notably at Dartmouth, which was funded for the education of Indian youth, but there seems to have been no systematic or persistent attempt to educate Indians until 1879. And so again, this kind of speaks to, the experience of Indian students and children. There's no really, true system in place. And this can provide, additional context to our larger kind of comparison of what was happening in Dunn, North Carolina, but also what was happening in the whole of the US and in other, states and cities. So again, to kind of just go back to the different viewing options here, up in your toolbar, your document viewer toolbar here, we have two new ways to view these documents. The first one I want to show you is this book view. And what this does, I'm going to go full screen again. This gives researchers the ability to view documents in a two-page spread, which really replicates the experience of, reading the original book, flipping through page by page, and it gives you that feel of, holding that book. There's also a new view called the thumbnail view, which gives researchers this kind of bird's eye view of the entire document. This is one of my favorite new additions to our document viewer because it really allows for researchers to kind of organically stumble upon content that they may otherwise miss if they're just traditionally kind of moving through a large document or relying on those hit term highlights to take them through the document. They might miss some of these photographs, some of these maps that can be really useful and tell a story. And so you get this bird's eye view of the entire, monograph or newspaper issue or manuscript. And if you see something that looks interesting to you, you can simply click on it and be taken to that page. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that too, as those are new features within the platform that allow you to really kind of navigate those larger works a little bit more easily. The next thing, so now, we have a manuscript, we have a monograph, and, potentially this is a good start to kind of answering that or, researching that topic of the integration or segregation of schools for, Native American students. So I want to switch gears entirely and go back to our advanced search and just show you some of those unique features that Sarah kind of mentioned in her portion here, where you do have the opportunity to find really unique content, outside of your standard articles and manuscripts and poems. You can find a bunch of different document types. So if we scroll down here to our filters, you can find, census data. You can find charts and graphs. You can find diary entries, drawings. You'll even find things like musical work. But the one I'm going to highlight for us today is maps. I think that maps can tell, again, a really great story when you're looking at where different, Indigenous peoples are and did live. And so I'm just going to change document type to map here. And then for the sake of my audience, I will go ahead and type in North Carolina as my search term. And when I do that, I'm brought to different, manuscripts that have maps of North Carolina or that include North Carolina in them. So I'm just going to open up this first one here. Again, it's a lot of times, or you will be taken to the first page that has your hit term present. So North Carolina being my search term here. So you might have to do a little navigating to find that map. But in our illustrated works that we saw earlier, you can see that there are drawings, there's different tables, there's photographs, and there's even a section for maps. And so I can really easily find that first map that we saw in the thumbnail image, but there's other maps present too. And we can look here at a map of North Carolina, and we can see the Lumbee, tribe. We can see Cherokee. We can look at all of the indigenous tribes on the West Coast and so on and so forth. And again, I think maps just tell a completely different story than, an article in the newspaper or something. So there's just a lot of unique and fun and interesting content that you can pull from here, interesting imagery that can make, teaching about Native American peoples can just make it more exciting and more engaging for your students. Another advanced search highlight that I wanted to show you all is that, as Sarah mentioned, you do have the ability to search for documents within different Native and Indigenous languages. So again, below in our filters here, you can see a list of different languages that are present. I can look at Mi'kmaq, for example, and I can actually just hit a search from here. I don't need to enter a search term. And I'm brought to content that has that Mi'kmaq language present. So just for the sake of examples, I'll open this first one. And I'm just going to simply kind of flip through the pages here. This is actually a book all about teaching the Mi'kmaq language, differentiating between different types of birds and fish and trees, names of places, things like that. So it's almost like a teaching, language here. So I'm just going to click through. Of course, we're spinning. So here you can see, I think we skipped past the alphabet because my cursor is spinning. Let me see if going. Here we go. So we have like the alphabet comparison here to the English alphabet and the Mi'kmaq alphabet. You can continue through and seeing, how to pronounce different things based on, different accent marks, different, the English language and the Mi'kmaq language. So I just thought that was really interesting. And this was all just from filtering to that language and hitting search without putting in any search terms. I'm brought to some documents that have that language present. The next thing I want to do, kind of leveraging the advanced search, is I want to really highlight that advanced indexing that Sarah mentioned and really kind of show you it live and in action. As she mentioned, there are, again, it is no secret that the terminology that colonizers and non-Indigenous peoples use to refer to Indigenous peoples is oftentimes not the same as the terms that Indigenous peoples are using to refer to themselves. And so with that indexing, you can search for a specific tribe's name, but you'll get that, you'll get the other terminology that is used to reference that same tribe. So for example, the Haudenosaunee that Sarah mentioned, give me 1 second while I make sure I'm not spelling this incorrectly. They are a tribe that you can search for. And for this example, I'm going to only look within newspapers and periodicals. And what's going to happen here is when I execute a search, oh, I must have spelled it wrong. 1 second. Here we go. What's going to happen here is that indexing is going to kick into action. And so if I look at my keyword previews, I can see that, Iroquois is coming up, Six Nations is coming up. I can see, you'll probably see references to Five Nations. And all of that is being indexed as synonymous to the Haudenosaunee tribe. The Haudenosaunee translate to people of the Long House, so you can see that even being indexed and highlighted here. So again, that indexing is really advanced. We're really proud of it. And you can see that OCR plain text really kind of in that indexing being put into work here. So what I want to do now is kind of look at what a newspaper article looks like in this archive. As Sarah mentioned, there are a variety of different publications, either from different Indigenous peoples or organizations that are represented in this archive. This is one of them. So what happens when you are searching and finding search results within newspapers or periodicals is you'll be taken to the article, the relevant article within that larger issue, okay? So as you all are probably aware, when you look at a giant newspaper, there might be an article that's, one column on a much larger screen or much larger page, sorry. And sometimes that larger page can add a lot of context. What other articles are being printed on that same page? Was there some intention behind where this article was placed on the larger page? Is there like a clear differentiating marker? Is there a large image? Is there a different font type used? And so having not just access to the article, but access to the entire page can be really useful in our research. And so this right here is an article that is referencing the Mohawks of the Confederacy of the People of the Longhouse have basically served notice to the Canadian government that they will oppose any negotiations, agreements, or settlements on land claims made with Indian Act band councils or other groups. And so, short and sweet article, but what else is on this page? And so what's really great about our archives, and particularly the newspapers, is that we design them so that you can really easily move from an individual archive onto that larger full page. And in order to do that, we are going to go into our our view options here. And when you click view options, remember this is where we found our plain text OCR. Right now you can see that what is highlighted is article only. If I want to kind of zoom out and look at the full page, I can change that. And now I'm taken to the full page from this issue of the late summer of 1975 publication of the Akwesasne Notes, which is a publication coming out of New York. And so I can see, again, there are multiple other articles placed on this page. Is there something like an image or an outline that is drawing readers to this article, and what's the intentionality behind it? So I love newspapers. They can tell you a story before you even get into the article itself. And again, we are trying to allow for that further exploration straight from the document viewer tools right here. You also have the ability, to further explore this issue. So now I can move, forward and backwards within the issue to see what else was being published that same day in this publication. If I'm interested to seeing other issues from this publication, I can actually go to my Explore panel here, and I can see what the next issue released was. I can see what the previous issue was, and I can really easily move into that new issue and do some additional exploring here. So now we're taken to the early autumn 1975 issue of the Akwesasne Notes. Okay, so there's other ways to explore here too. You'll notice that below the next issue and previous issue, there's also related subjects. So, subjects that are tagged on the page that you're reading will show up here. And then if you are to click on that subject, what it does is it actually executes a brand new subject search for that subject term. So this is just a really great way to expand your research. You're looking at the Haudenosaunee people. Maybe you want to, again, further expand your research and do a search for Mohawks to see if there's other content that might come up and be useful to the research question that you have. That is all available, again, just from the document viewer. We're trying to make it, easy for our users to explore. Let's say, you're reading this larger 47-page issue and you're wanting to find a particular word or topic within the article. You can actually execute a search within the document as well and do that. And then any instances of that, this should work, of that word will show up in your appearances here. And of course, that's not going to work for me. So let me try. Iroquois. Okay, well, clearly I'm picked a bad example here, but what should happen is that any instances of that new search term should work. I'm not sure why it's not, but I'll have to do some digging and see if I can get that to work for us. What I want to do, again, is switch gears kind of one more time and show you one more way to navigate the archive. I realize we're kind of running up to the end of our time here. But there's another way to find content, and that's by browsing. So all of those 52 collections that Sarah mentioned can all be found straight from your toolbar here, where you can then further explore each and every one of these collections. If you're, an experienced researcher and you know exactly which collection and which manuscript and which, folder number you're looking for, you can really easily pop into that collection and find that information that you're looking for. We'll just kind of scroll down to the bottom here and pick one that is focused on the Association on American Indian Affairs, remember the AAIA organization that we talked about earlier. This particular collection goes into the publications, programs, and legal and organizational files of AAIA. And so here you can just really quickly see an overview of the collection, some collection facts. You can search directly within this collection or view all documents that make up this collection. Or again, you can just continue kind of browsing. You can expand some of these drop downs here and find, the manuscript number or the document title. This is meant to, again, kind of replicate the experience of going to this collection in person, pulling out the legal cases and programs and opening up, manuscript number 32822. So what we're going to do is we are going to open one just to kind of show you a few more tools. This is a case from it's coming out of Minnesota. It's all about the fight for welfare support. There is a family, the Ballou family, who basically were denied welfare because of their tribal affiliation. And so this case really kind of looked at looked at the welfare system and how it could greatly improve. And this case in particular is actually used often and studied often as an example of the intersection of race, poverty, and state assistance programs. So it might be a good one for you to bookmark. But again, I've just browsed right into the collection. I've opened up the the legal cases here, and I've opened up this file for the Supreme Court case on the state of Minnesota. And I'm brought right back to my document viewer where we've looked at some of those tools previously, and I can, navigate through the document, or maybe it will work for me this time. I can do a search for welfare laws. Here we go. And now anywhere in this document where that search term is present will populate on the left side here, and I can find where welfare laws is stated in this document. The last thing I want to show you before I kick it back over to Sarah is within this Explore panel, there's one more thing I didn't show you, and that is the related resources. So within Select Archives from Gale, there's an interoperability between the archive and your Gale eBooks holdings. So basically what that means is that in this Explore panel, if there are any relevant, related reference articles that are useful in contextualizing the primary source that you're reading, they'll be found here. They're automatically going to link with your eBooks holdings. You'll never find a dead link. You'll never find, a link to content you don't have access to. These are live links. They're smart links. And so right here, I can look at Native American rights from a reference standpoint. I'm actually taken into the Gale eBooks platform. I'm brought to a topic overview all about Native American rights. And, again, this does a few things. It's going to extend the use of primary sources. Again, it's going to really contextualize the subjects and topics that are outlined in primary source documents. And it's really going to position these relevant reference materials directly into the researcher's workflow. And if you think about typical assignments today, I feel like instructors are typically asking for primary sources and secondary sources. And all of this is really, at the fingertips of your researchers, straight from your Explore panel, which makes it really easy for researchers to find those relevant and trusted materials. So with that being said, I know I showed you a variety of ways to kind of navigate the archive. I'm going to kick it back over to Sarah to kind of quickly talk about the Learning Center, and then we'll move into talking about additional support that you can find on our support site and support that my team offers each of your individual institutions.
Had to unmute myself. All right. So what I'm going to show you next is a little bit about the Learning Center. So there's quite a lot to comprehend in these archives, but how can we, as libraries and librarians, extend the use of this primary source collection across your campus? One helpful tool that we do offer in our primary source collections is called a Learning Center. And when you navigate into the Learning Center from the sticky toolbar, you're going to be brought to a page that looks as such. Now, the great thing about our primary sources learning centers is that they're all structured the same way. However, the content in every single Gale Primary Source Collections Learning Center is bespoke to that particular resource. So the framework is really conceptualize, find, read, and use. And this is a framework that is really kind of coinciding with the guidelines for primary source literacy developed by ACRL and SAA. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're leveraging the framework that they've outlined. So these steps, you can navigate through them through the main page of your screen or using the left-hand menu on the side of the Learning Center. So this over here is considered the Learning Center menu, or again, you can, navigate in different ways if you want to scroll. So under Conceptualize, I just wanted to point out a few helpful tools. So as you're really trying to promote the utility of this collection, these learning centers may help you really kind of expedite the interest across the archive and really kind of allow you to get great lift for bibliographic instructional sessions that you might be doing to engage faculty and students around this particular archive collection. So under Conceptualize, I think a well-footer to become familiar with what all is included in Indigenous Peoples North America is the About the Archive section. So here you can get just a general overview about what the collection includes. And then you have other sections under this same category of Conceptualize, such as About the Source Collections. When you click into About the Source Collections, those 52 collections, each one of them, can be cross-searched together within the archive itself. However, you may want to highlight specific collections for closer interrogation. And so what we're doing here is really kind of outlining at a high level what those collection opportunities are so that you can engage with some of that material. And again, provide some background introduction materials about the archive itself and the collections held within to help orient students and faculty to the materials held within. Again, under Conceptualize, another wonderful area to familiarize yourself with the content. Students can come in here and explore sample topics and searches. Faculty have been using a lot of these sample topics and searches as part of their instructional, needs in creating materials for the exploration of primary sources and to engage in critical discussions around them. So under sample topics and searches, you'll have some specific topics and searches to navigate into. So if you really wanted to focus in on removal, you can click on that link and then be brought to the removal section here. You would be presented with an overview of removal. And then what we're doing is we're trying to help with generative search terms and search strategies. So what we're doing here is we're offering various search terms. All of these hyperlinks will take you specifically, they'll kick off a specific search. So Indian near 3 words or less of relocate. It'll kick off that search and show you those results. So as a student, as you're sort of refining your search strategy and your search skills, you could compare and contrast and start to see how search terms and generative search terms really do kind of enhance your research process. We also offer some critical thinking questions, some basic or novice questions, if you will, and some advanced questions to consider as well as you look to evaluate some of these search strategies and examine some of the documents related to removal. You also have things repeated here. Like oftentimes you would probably have to, work with students to help them understand, terminology throughout history and how that has evolved. A little bit about, what kind of problematic, language they might want to encounter. And so we've got some verbiage here as well under Conceptualize. Under Find, you also have similar kind of tips listed here. So basic search tips on how to search the archive. But again, another section I think that is pretty helpful as it relates to primary source materials is the language and terminology section, kind of exploring for students and researchers, the types of things that they might need to consider when choosing search terms in a search strategy. Under Read, you're going to find detailed information about search term hits and OCR and metadata, but you'll also encounter what I call research examples or longer form case studies, if you will. So again, these are just helpful examinations to help your audience understand a little bit more about the types of materials that are held within these archives. So in these research examples, this is going to introduce you to the kinds of questions you can use to interrogate primary sources. And we've got a couple of example sort of case studies, if you will, here. One on assimilation in Indian schools, and the other on the Pueblo smallpox epidemic. And so these sort of provide a little bit more context. Again, you'll have hyperlinks throughout. You can navigate directly to any of the spotlighted documents. And then again, some of those critical thinking questions and some of the search tips and sample searches that we have available to allow people to consider various generative search terms. And then under use, finally, you're going to have the ability to get information about citations, copyright, and reuse. So if you're looking for information about materials that you can reuse in publication, this section here will outline that. And then you'll have a section on essays. So if there are any scholarly essays that any of our partners have contributed, these may provide context for using the materials in the Indigenous Peoples of North America archive. And might also be beneficial for instructional opportunities as well. So anytime you are interested in looking at any of this content, maybe incorporating some of these materials into a course guide that you think would be useful, you do have the permalink in the top right-hand corner of the screen. This get link functionality will provide a persistent URL to any bookmark page that you are interested in using. So if there is relevant information or content that you wish to point individuals to in your LibGuides or course guides, again, this get link functionality can be helpful. You can also integrate that into a learning management system. It automatically embeds any of your proxy details behind that URL. You will not see it documented in the URL stanza. It's sort of behind the scenes to kind of shrink down the permalink itself. So all of that is very helpful information, can help you all as librarians really get the word out on how this can be utilized in research and instruction. So great for providing you with background information on some of the strategies there. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Becky at this point, and she's going to help close us out.
Thank you. So again, I do recognize the time. I know I went a little long earlier, but I wanted to just kind of quickly show you our support site. This is a great place to find support information for any of your Gale resources. Obviously, today we're looking at Indigenous Peoples of North America. But the first thing that I would recommend that you do when you enter our support site, which you can find at support.gale.com, is log into your location ID. If you're not sure what that is, we'll help you out. I'll share our emails at the end here. But when you do log into with your location ID, what ends up happening is the support site is going to become customized to your institution. And right away, you will see who your training and engagement specialist is. I just picked Coastal Carolina for this example. So this is my colleague, Kayla Dollard. Again, you may recognize her, but she's a great resource for anything in terms of product support. But on the support site itself, you can find our training center where you can browse by product. This will only show resources from Gale that you have access to. And if we scroll to the bottom here, we can find the Indigenous Peoples of North America resource. And this is where you'll find any previously recorded webinars that my team has hosted, any tutorials. These are more like 5 to 10 minutes long on both part 1 and part 2, as well as the overall archive. And we also have LibGuides, and what this LibGuide is showing you is it is going over the history of residential schools in North America using the Indigenous Peoples of North America archive. So there's some sample searches in here. There's some great documents highlighted. We can look at other, collections as well as even archives on bound collections. So this is a publicly available LibGuide that you can use and link to if you are interested, and if you have questions about that, you can contact us. I would just quickly kind of show you a screen of all of the support that my team offers. We can help with anything in terms of, hosting workshops for the library or for faculty, even students. We can help with kind of asynchronous services like creating custom LibGuides, like doing course correlations or research correlations, subject guide development. We can also help with things like discovery and, getting your MARC records imported and your A to Z list up to date. So really my team, Sarah's team, we do all of that. Your primary people, I'll pause for questions, but your primary people are here on the screen. I will leave this up if you want to reach out to any of us to schedule a future training session, to schedule any of that, additional asynchronous support. It's most likely your trainer is either me or Kayla Dollard, my counterpart. So feel free to reach out to either of us with any questions.